Mhm.
Professor Giovanni, I think that we can start.
Please.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Yannick Landou. I'm a nephrologist from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I'm the current chair of the Afghan Young Nephrologist Committee. As part of its activities, the Afghan Young Nephrologist Committee regularly organizes webinars, and today is one of a series on scientific research. It is therefore my pleasure to introduce Professor Giovanni, who will be the main moderator of this webinar. Professor Giovanni is a professor of nephrology and epidemiology and associate editor of the Cochrane Kidney and Transplant Group, and has been running the ISN Scientific writing course for several years. Thank you, Professor, for accepting our invitation.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Yannick. And so let us get started with this session about scientific writing. So we will have 4 speakers today. I will introduce every speaker to you and the topic that they will be presenting on, and then we will have a discussion with questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So the first speaker is Dr. Victorine Nzana. She is a nephrologist and a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Medicine and Biochemical Sciences at the University of Yaoundé in Cameroon. And she's also co-chair of the African Association of Nephrology, Young Nephrology Committee, and Secretary General of Women in Nephrology in Africa. She will be delivering a talk about a general overview of the ISN Scientific Writing course, and then start discussing with you about how to formulate a research question and how to write the introduction of a research paper. So I hope you enjoy the course, and let's get started with the first talk from Victorine. Please, Victorine, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Giovanni. So we'll begin with a brief overview of the course. I hope everyone is seeing my screen. Okay, that's fine. So the ISN Scientific Writing course is launched by a group of the ISN Clinical, just 1 minute. I have this looking, okay. It's launched by the ISN Clinical Research Program, and we have a group of experts in ISN writings that do run this course. And as prerequisite for the course, we needed to apply for the course. And the main requirement for the application was to have an active research program project ongoing. And after the selection, we had pre-courses with a lot of statistic courses, assignment and tasks, and reading material that we had to do before coming for the course. So the first ISN Scientific Writing course in Africa was held as a pre-course of the Egyptian Society of Nephrology Congress from the 11th of February to the 13th of February 2024, and it was a 3-day course. So as you can see on the photo, we had 4 faculty members present, and 15 participants out of the 16 got selected. So 7 from Egypt and 8 from other countries of the world. And that was at the opening ceremony. We had the Afran president, Professor Hani, who accompanied us, and our ISN coordinators to present. These were the 4 faculty members present: Professor Marcelo, Professor Nesh, Professor Rumeza, and Professor Giovanni. And we had, as I said, 16 participants selected, but 15 were present on site. We had a participant from Burkina Faso, Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, Congo, Somali, Uganda, Cameroon again, and we had 8 participants from Egypt. So the 3 days program was very intense. As you can see, we had the different parts of the ISN writing program. And each time, the important thing is that each time we had one presentation, we had 4 working groups, as you can see on the picture. And it was more practical. That's the ice cream of this course, because like if we did like the introduction part, everybody in the group had to share the introduction in their scientific work, and we discussed it together, and we got input from our various faculty members. So at the end of the 3 days course, we received certificates. So looking at the research question and the introduction session, the research question was done by, section was done by Professor Giovanni himself. And it's always important to formulate an answerable question. And how do we go about that? You will use the PICO method. That's ideally, so you want to know what the problem is, the intervention, if you have a comparator, and the outcome. And then you have to identify the best data base or study design for your question. And we should have to avoid being too broad, non-specific, and we should avoid unanswerable questions. So this was an example that Professor Johanna shared with us. I'll take it all over. What is the role of antibiotics in people who get recurrent skin infections? And this question is said to be too broad, not specific, not clear, and unanswerable. Why? Because yes, we had the population. The population is patients with recurrent skin infection. But the intervention wasn't clear. We don't know what they were talking about, maybe prophylactic antibiotics or curative antibiotics. And he even advised us to maybe specify, because it's broad, you have to specify which antibiotic you're talking about, maybe the dose and the route. It becomes more specific. Yeah, in this particular question, we don't have a comparator, but whenever you have a comparator, you have to include it in the research question. And the outcome, what are we expecting of the outcome? Is it to reduce recurrent rates? So it was not clear. And PICOM, as we're talking about the methodology, we have to get what's the best feasible study type, study design for your question. And this will depend on the type. Is it your question looking at frequency or diagnosis, etiology, prognosis, whatever? But depending on that, we can get the suitable method and be able to answer a question. So then we work further to match the question you have set with the best medical information resource. So looking at the introduction, this was a recorded lecture by Professor Aparna from India, and he reminded us that the introduction sets the stage for the reader. And it's the first component, as we all know, of the original article structure. That's IMRAD, which stands for Introduction, Methods and Material, Result, and Discussion. And the introduction is not always mandatory. Like when we have a document talking about commentaries, editorials, and letters, we don't need an introduction. And we should be mindful that the introduction is 10% of the full text. So for instance, you have a manuscript of 4,000 words, your introduction has to have maximum 400 words. And this is very important because it stimulates the reader's interest and it gives the first positive impressions. What are the common errors when writing an introduction? We don't want to be too long. You don't want to be repeating things, and we should avoid having an extensive list of references. And we should make sure we always include the key previous work on the study, because when it's missing, the introduction loses its value. And the objectives should be clearly stated in our introduction. And you don't want to write long, unclear sentences, and you will avoid using abbreviation without identifying them. So for those who are experts in writing, they'll tell you, yes, the introduction is the first part of the structure of the original article, but it's not written. Usually when we write an article, it's not written first as the first part. So the introduction is written as a fourth part of it. So we better start by writing out your method when you're writing a paper, the results, the discussion, and from the discussion, we can do the introduction, then do the conclusion. So although the introduction will be the first part, but you see, to be able to guide a good introduction, you should have had written the first three parts. That's the method, the results, and the discussion. And the introduction has three parts. And the first two parts is from the background. So the first step is what is known about your subject. What is the knowledge gap? That's the second part. Both what is known and what is the knowledge gap, you get it from the background, and what is the purpose of the subject, and we can get that. That's how to resolve the gap. So at the end of the introduction, you should be able to answer these three questions: what is known, what is the knowledge gap, and how to resolve the gap. So, and these three steps can be done in 3 paragraphs. So what is known, you have a full literature review and you get the essential information needed. And what is unknown should focus on helping the reader understand why the research is being performed. And the last paragraph should state the research question, the hypothesis, the objective of the study. So the keynote, key points, you should always ask yourself, if I were the reader, how much information would I really need to understand the question and why it matters? And the introduction may give an impressive overview, as we said, of the topic and the gaps, but the reader may fail to appreciate the question behind the study. Is mention of all, you have to, have you done a mention of all the work or other references? Is it necessary? As we said, it's very necessary, especially the key ones. And we should respect the target of word limit. We said 10% of the total manuscript. And we want to know whether some of the information or associated references might fit better in the discussion session or when we're interpreting the results, because you don't want an override between the introduction and the discussion. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you very much, Victorine. This was a very good presentation about how to write the introduction section and the key message about what is known, what is not known, and why are we doing a specific study. We will have a discussion at the end of the all the talks. Can I encourage the participants to make note of any question they have and eventually write the questions in the chat if they would like, so that at the end of the presentations we can get any question that has popped up. Is that okay, or Dr. Yannick, or would you like to take some questions on the go? I suggest we should take them all at the end for practical reasons, but I encourage people to actually write them in the chat box, otherwise they will go forgotten. Is that okay?
Yes, I totally agree with you, Professor.
Okay, very good. So we will now move to the second speaker, Dr. Basma Osman, who is a lecturer of internal medicine and nephrology at Suez Canal University, Ismailia, Egypt, and who has done a joint Master of Health and Professional Education at Maastricht University. She will deliver a talk about how to write the methods section, another very important section of a research paper. So please, Basma, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Professor Jubani. I'm going to discuss how to write method section and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. We will start with this. Someone asked, method section aren't difficult, and the other said, no, but it's important that you write them well. The general structure of a full article includes the title, authors, abstract, keywords, and main text that include introduction, methods, results, and discussion as said by Victorine, and then the acknowledgement, references, and supplementary materials. We have two terms, the methodology and the methods. There is a difference between both. The methodology is the overall strategy of your research, while the methods are the procedures like surveys and experiments that you use to collect and analyze data and any relevant details about the material, subjects, and so on. The researcher also needs to know the logic behind the selection of the particular methods of their research. So the research methodology includes research methods and the logic for the research. The method section of the research article is like a roadmap leading to the core of the research. It's guiding the researcher through the whole journey of data collection, analysis, and interpretation, and guiding the readers through the actual journey of the authors to reach their destination. In the manuscript, this section contains the essential details of other scientists to replicate the experiment of this study. Materials and method section briefly describe how you did your research and detail the experiment and procedures and materials used for the research. What did you do to answer your research question? And how was the data collected or generated? How was it analyzed? As Professor Panot mentioned in her lecture about method section, the goals of method section include present and experimental design, provide enough detail to allow readers to interpret your results, and give enough detail of readers to replicate your work. The importance of this section is it provides the reader enough information to judge whether the study is valid and it is reproducible. Again, here, he asked her about how did you do your experiment, and she answered, I added the drug to cells, then looked at them on the microscope. He asked again, how much drug dissolved in what, which cells, how many, who were they captured, how they were captured, and for how long, which microscope was used. So we have to tell the reader everything they will need to repeat the experiment, and the details always matter. Skeleton of the method section include describing how you obtained your results in a way that others could replicate them. We may use some guidelines according to the type of the study. Also, we include the study design, the participants, sample size calculation, and defining exposures and outcomes, statistical analysis used, and the ethical approach. We start with introduction to the methodology in the form of a concise statement that serves as a guidepost, fostering understanding and engagement. Then the research design, and this is a blueprint for the study, guiding the structure, strategy, and integrity. It connects the project aim and facilitates meeting our objectives. Then the subheading of the participant, and this includes identifying non-human subjects and their characteristics, obtaining informed consent, and explaining the inclusion-exclusion criteria and group characteristics, defining the study population, and emphasizing recruitment process and ethical consideration, reporting the sample characteristics, sampling procedure, and the calculation of the sample size. Descriptive terms as participants, subjects, and respondents can be used. The APA guidelines emphasize using bias-free language. For example, we have this card. We have 134 cisgender men, aged 18 to 25, from a public university in New York. Participants were right-handed, fluent in English, and first-generation colleague students. And if we apply the characteristics of the participant, we have here the sample size, we have the sex and the age and the study site, and then characteristics of the participants. The next subheading includes the intervention study design overview, and this includes investigating outcomes of the intervention, verbal or graphic timeline. We have to mention the sequence of events in chronological sequence, including design information, participant assignment, and experimental design. Then data collection, methods and procedures. We have to list and describe the necessary research materials and procedures. Data collection methods include surveys, interviews, and observations, and etc. Research design should be reported, and also masking should be disclosed to reduce research bias and current internal and ensure the internal validity of the research. Then data analysis, and this describing the analysis methods, statistical tests used, and the power analysis. We have to specify also the statistical software packages and its version. We have also to set the statistical significance at an a priori alpha level of 0.05. Quantitative analysis that deal with numerical data, while qualitative with categorical data, and also choosing the appropriate analysis method based on the data and its nature. Then the ethical consideration, we have to adhere to the ethical norms. We respect for privacy and rights of the participant. We also give the participant the right to withdraw from the process at any time, and maintaining confidentiality and anonymity of data, understanding the impact of data analysis and reporting. Authors of the animal studies must ensure they treat them humanly and adhere to the Declaration of Helsinki. Also, we have to get the approval from the Institutional Review Board and the Ethical Committee. The existing standards and checklist guidelines that could be used, we have many and many according to the type of the study. For example, we have the CONSORT, this for the randomized control trials, and PRISMA for meta-analysis and systemic review studies. Method section, organization, and information. We have some rules for organizing the method section. We have to divide it into subsections, each dedicated to a single technique or related technique. Information presented in order from most general to the most specific, and ideally presented in chronological order, and subsections should be presented in the same order as that mentioned in the results section. Now, what to do and what don't do. First, we have to use tense, past tense, and use acronym and abbreviations, and use flow diagrams. We have to write in a third person using active voice. We have to follow the journal guidelines, also tell the story, and chronological from general to specific, as we said. We have to use transition to connect sentence or paragraphs, keep the text concise by keeping it short, gather relevant and up-to-date papers from the last decade, balance detail and readability, including necessary data, and exclude these irrelevant materials or data, use specific objectives or experiment names, include ethical approval, informed consent, and commitment to responsible research practices, specify variables, outline the statistical analysis process and using visual aids, emphasize a consistent writing style, avoiding vague language, ensure reliable sources and citing. And now, regarding what don't use or avoid in our methodology section, we have to avoid repetition and unnecessary details, avoid long, complicated sentence, summarize or abbreviate the methods, don't presume you will always remember how you performed the experiment, avoid discussing pros and cons of other methods, avoid cluttering a paragraph with multiple main ideas or themes, don't use inconsistent tone. We have to maintain a uniform writing style in our methodology. Don't cross the recommended word count. We have also to avoid plagiarism and make everything positive by detailing the problems you anticipate and how you avoided them. Avoid hiding limitations or constraints or non-optimal decisions to ensure transparency and credibility. Also, don't lack the justification. It's very important to state the rationale behind the methodology. Exaggerating the validity or reliability of our chosen methods is not recommended. We have also to avoid directly replicating methods from other studies unless their relevance to our research is properly justified. To summarize, the main challenge you may find when writing your methods is keeping it readable and covering all the details needed for reproducibility and replicability. While this is difficult, don't compromise on rigorous standards for credibility. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Basma, for a very good talk about the method session. This is a very difficult session to write. We often find a lot of mistakes. For example, people reporting results in the method sections and things that shouldn't be there. We will, as I said previously, be open for any question that the audience may have. at the end of the presentation series. Please make sure you pencil down any specific question you may have. And we are now going to introduce our third speaker, which is Dr. Mohammed Eladedin, who is a consultant in nephrology and kidney transplantation at the Urology and Nephrology Center of the Mansoura University in Egypt. And Mohammed is going to give a talk about how to write the results section. This is the one of the also most complex parts of writing a paper. And then also Mohammed will give us some information about artificial intelligence at the end of all the talk series. So please, Mohammed, the floor is to you.
Thank you so much, Professor Giovanni. I'm very happy to be participating in this event, and I'm also so grateful to my professors, especially Professor Marcello Tonelli, professor in University of Calgary, Canada, a dedicated researcher who have been named highly cited researcher since 2015 by Thomson Reuters Web of Science. Dr. Tonelli is the president-elect of the International Society of Nephrology. So without further ado, we will start our results section. Now we have 4 main steps in writing the results section. Step 1 is what is the key message? What do we want to tell the reader, the audience, about our idea, about our research idea? Step 2 consists of creating an empty table and what other tables are needed and what do the data in these tables show. Do they contribute to the key message? Step 3, to choose some figures to support the key message. And step number 4 is to write the text of the results. So regarding step number 1, which is what is the key message? Well, it depends on how do you want to formulate the results you analyzed. For example, we have 3 paragraphs that they may have the same meaning, that older and sicker people with severe CKD are much more likely to die than those require dialysis. This, if you want to deliver a message that older people are or are exposed to more complication than younger people. However, some researchers might be interested about other comorbidities, like how many comorbidities these people have, at what cut-off age, like older people is a vague term. Older than what? Older than 60, 70, 80. We can see the second example telling us that among people aged over 80 years with 3 or more comorbidities, this was approximately 100 times more likely than dialysis. If your key message is not about the morbidity related to the age of the people requiring dialysis, it's about the burden, the cost the clinics should have. You should write the third paragraph. CKD clinics should consider age and morbidity burden when counseling patients about preparation for end-stage renal disease. So the 3 paragraphs might look the same, but they are totally different from each other. Interpretation and explaining the results should depend on your key message. Like earlier we mentioned, the paper, you should tell a story. So each part of the story should be linked to each other. Step number 2, create an empty table. It's very important to imagine how your tables will look like. This will be very important when you are writing the methods, when you are collecting the data, because if you imagined a table with some variables, you won't miss any variable during the data collection. You won't miss the variable of age, sex, and whatever, something like that. So you must create empty table or empty tables, not just one table, of what you want to perform. Step number 2, what other tables are needed? Do you need only a table for demographic if you are performing a cross-sectional study, or if you are performing a prospective study, should you run another regression analysis like hazard regression analysis? Should you perform a Kaplan-Meier curve if you are running a survival analysis, and so on? So you should imagine how many tables and what variables should be mentioned in these tables. The second part of the step 2 is what do these tables show. You are running a regression analysis, for example, like the one we have here. You should mention the number of participants, the mortality risk, the hazard ratio of mortality risk, or the hazard ratio of myocardial infarction, or the hazard ratio of hospitalization, the hazard ratio of what? And the hazard ratio or the results depends mainly on your key message or on your research question. So step number 3 is to choose some figures to support your key message. You should describe what is graphed. Is it a line graph, Kaplan-Meier graph, bar chart, pie chart? Is to avoid colors that are difficult to distinguish, consider color blindness, and if the study needs a flow chart or what. So this graph, for example, representing line graph, it represents the time needed for each organ for the gadolinium concentration to reach in peak in tissue. So you should describe what is the graph, line graph, pie chart, bar chart. Second part is to avoid colors that are difficult to distinguish, and it's more preferably that your graph should be simple, contain only 2 or 3, maximum 4 groups, and to choose black and white color. And if you want to differentiate between the groups, you should use dashed line or segmented line and stick to the black and white. So what if you had to use color? You should consider the color blindness, and the internet is full of softwares that can tell you what type of colors you should use to avoid so that if any reader have color blindness, he can recognize the groups in your graph. And number 4, does a study need a flowchart? And most of the studies need a flowchart. You must explain and visualize to the reader what did you do, how did you collect the data, how many patients were collected or were gathered at the beginning of the study, how many patients dropped out, how many patients lost follow-up, how many patients you included, how many patients you excluded, and the best visualization of these results is to create a flow chart. Step number 4 is to write the text of the results. Text of the results should tell a story, should be homogeneous. You should transit smoothly from each table to the next. And the table should show the data, figures emphasize the key points. We should start by describing the population, and then describe exposure, and then describe the outcome. Just for this example. This example shows us the characteristics of study participants. We should relate to which figure or which table. Then we should mention the number of participants, the mean age, the percentage of male and females. We should explain briefly and in simple plain language the characteristic or the type of morbidity in these patients and the primary outcome, like these patients reached end-stage renal disease were more experienced to death when they had complications like cardiovascular event or placebo event. It's also important to link the exposure and the outcome. Like if the exposure in the stage renal disease, I should link the outcome. What the primary outcome I was searching for? I was searching for mortality outcome? I was searching for cardiovascular outcome? I was searching for like comparing drug versus placebo or drug versus surgical treatment? I should link the primary outcome to the findings. The last step is to consider any sensitivity analysis. And by sensitivity analysis, we mean that you have 2 or 3 different analyses to reach the optimum results. For example, if you have missing values, then you run the analysis with the missing values, and you run the analysis after imputing the missing values. For example, by examples like mean or median, and then you compare both results. Did they differ? And then you should mention the sensitivity analysis in the results, and you should attach the sensitivity analysis results as a supplementary material. So briefly, these were the 4 main steps in writing the results section, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. This is another important part of a research paper. In fact, the most important, because research writing is a science. It's an analytical science, and the results section is where you're showing all your data, and clarity is fundamental. So I hope there will be questions around this, and you can elucidate on the different aspects which you covered very well in this presentation. We will now move to our next speaker, which is Dr. Hassan Fula. And Hassan has a master's degree of internal medicine at the Faculty of Medicine, the University of Alexandria in Egypt. Is a recipient of an ISN Advanced Interventional Nephrology Scholarship in Kai, Vascular Access Training Center in Japan 2022, and he is the head of the Nephrology and Interventional Nephrology Unit at Kwabari Specialty Hospital in Alexandria, Egypt since August 2023. Hassan will give a talk about how to write the discussion session of a paper. And I always say that, I think I say this at the scientific writing course we do every year, that the first discussion I wrote, I think I wrote it 13 times before it actually came through. So Hassan, please explain to us what we have to do when writing the discussion of a paper. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Professor Giovanni, for your kind introduction. And it's time for I think, the most difficult part of the paper that we should consider, like Professor Giovanni just said. So for writing a good discussion, it is usually a very, very difficult job, because what we will talk later, and for what it is a very time consuming, because like Professor Giovanni just said, he write more than 13 times, more than 10 times, more than 5 times. So for the upcoming minutes, I will tell you in brief how should we start in the discussion method. So the discussion usually contains 3 main sections. The first one is to summarize the main principal finding the study, and then summarize the novelty in the first paragraph. The second paragraph, usually we should explain importance, relevance of each finding, then explain difference between new results and others. Then in the third or fourth or fifth paragraph, I mean the last paragraph, we should illustrate strengths and weakness points in our study, find clinical implication, and then find areas for further research. So let's talk. Let's take each one in brief. So for the first part, for the first paragraph in our discussion, we should state clearly the key results. So we should not become vague. We should jump over the results. For the first paragraph, we should only explain our first result or the key result. So it contains the short answer for our research question. We usually don't jump over other results. So when the reader can read, or the reviewer read our paper, he should find his main question, the answer for the main question in the first paragraph. So then we should consider generalizability. And by generalizability, usually mean that we should consider our research people. So when I study this study on Egyptian population or African population, ranging from age 18 and age to 60 years, or on pediatrics, so the reader from the first paragraph can know, will know who will apply this paper on. So it is the first paragraph. Then for the second paragraph, we should explain importance, relevance of each finding, and then explain difference between our findings, our results, and others' findings. And in this paragraph, or paragraphs, because it may contain more than one, we should start discussing each finding alone in order. And when we are talking about order, we can take it in order, like the results, like Professor Hadidi just said, or in importance. So the key result is that, then the less important results, or in order like he just said. So, and then we should compare our findings with previous findings. And before we compare, we should know, and we should sit down and think if our results are expected or not expected. Because if it is expected, we should explain why they are expected and who did our results before, or the same results before, or unique, or just like these results. And by unexpected, when we show unexpected results, we should usually write it in details, and we should usually explain why we are using why we are accepting these unexpected findings. Because if we don't write these, reviewers will tell us, "Oh, hi, wait, why do you accept this unexpected finding?" And if our reviewers will not ask us, the reader will ask the same question. So be clear if the results are expected or unexpected. If expected, we should write that was expected result. And if not expected, we should also write that is not unexpected, and why we did accept these results while it is not unexpected for us. Then we should try to find a link between our finding and other previous findings. So our previous findings showed other results because they studied pediatric population, because they studied other population than adults or than Egyptian population. They tried a different dose of drug. They tried a different method of administration, whatever. But we should try find a link, even if it expected result or unexpected result. Then in the last paragraph, we should find strengths and weakness points in our study, and then find clinical implication and find areas of further research. And when we are digging in focus on the third paragraph or the last paragraph, we should discuss clinical implication of our findings. How will we apply this finding for our clinical or lab after this result? How should it change our clinical practice? How should it change our mind regarding a certain topic? And then we should criticize our work. Don't leave others to criticize you. You should criticize yourself. So you should write clearly the points of strength in our study, and then the points of weakness of our study, because you should know what are the points of criticism that we should. And then when we are trying to, when we are talking for criticism, we should think about every limitation, like study design, like availability, like people agreement for participate, like doctors agreement for participate, any limitation or any problem that we faced during the study preparation, we should write in the discussion method. And then we should find the way to next proposal or next area for research. So what to do and what not to do. I will start with things that we should not do. We should not repeat our result section again. So don't repeat numbers, percentage, tables in the result section. We should be clear. We are discussing our results, not repeating our results. So in this study, we showed that adult population who take antihypertensives have less blood pressure or more blood pressure control. So it makes sense not repeating the same results with the same numbers. Don't mention only the difference. So my findings was that Professor Hadidi findings was that without finding a link, we should find a link. We should always explain why and how I will accept these different studies, these different results between me and other people. So not only demonstrating the difference, we should always think about how I get different results and how can I expect or how can I accept these different results. And then you should not do explain some limitations only. As I said previous, we should explain every limitation in our study, every one, every single limitation in a clear manner, in a frank writing method. So don't take a defensive talk. Don't take a defensive talk to try to cover your limitations. Every study should have its limitations. So we should explain limitations and why we did accept these limitations, and then we can apply for further research. Don't write further studies are needed because you are an expert now in this field. So you should, rather than writing further studies are needed, you should write further studies in this situation with these circumstances are needed. Try to find a way for the next for the next research who are trying to add more to help him to not to repeat your limitations again. Then don't write more than necessary. Usually, a lot of people are writing more than necessary. We should try to focus in our results, to try to focus like we mentioned before in the main results, and then explain others as needed, not so much writing. So what should we do? We should mention the difference in depth. Why, how, and when should we accept the difference? Not only what, but why, how, and when. Then we should do outline first. So before writing our paragraphs, we can take like this table. So writing our findings in order, finding number 1, finding number 2, then expected or not, then explanation whether it expected or not, then comparison between my results and others. Should write every paper that take this point and compare, and then clinical importance. So when we are at the end of the day, when we are writing our paragraphs, I can see this table and okay, I will write a paragraph on the first finding, then the next finding, then the third finding, and so on and so on. So explain the finding before comparison with others. We should always explain our finding, then compare to others, and then try to find all limitations of our study frankly. Don't fear of limitations. So, and then we should explain how did we try to avoid our limitations, and then write further studies focusing on what are needed because our study. Let's take in my last 3 slides from the ISN Academy from my colleagues there that BMJ has the same idea of structuring this discussion. So if you are sticking to these areas or these points of discussion, you should write a good discussion to start with. And again, Cochrane has the same method for writing discussions. Other tools can help, like Strobe, Consort, STARD, and Quorum, resources that we can try to apply to our paper before submitting to the journal. Last thing, I want to acknowledge the ISN for their wonderful scientific writing course. We all owe the speakers very much, and the ESNT for providing these material in the pre-ESNT Congress in that year, and for Afran, especially the Young Nephrology Committee that take us to let people know about the cause. I should thank our whole group. I should thank Professor Giovanni. Special thanks for you, because you we have a lot of your time. Sorry, and thank you for letting us do that. I should thank Professor Banu, the coordinator of my group in the work, and all my group, Professor Basma and Dr. David and me. Then Sophie, the coordinator of the ISN, and lastly, my wife, who shared me the same course in these difficult days. And thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a very nice talk, and thank you for all these beautiful pictures at the end as well. Very appreciated. So obviously, writing the discussion is extremely complicated, as we said, and one should never be discouraged. The good thing is that most of scientific writing has now become very scientific, in the sense that there is a structure. So people should really try and focus on that structure. And you have shown very well that multiple journals are now adopting specifically and exactly the structure that you have outlined. So, any question your colleague will be able to answer at the end. Before we open the discussion session, we would now give the floor once again to Dr. Mohammed El Dedi, who will give us a brief presentation about what role artificial intelligence can have in scientific writing. And this is very topical, obviously, because, for example, I have found out in Italy, where I come from, that there are many colleagues I know who were completely unable to even write an email in proper English, that now write fantastic emails in English and fantastic scientific articles in English, which are obviously not written by them, but by ChatGPT. So it's very critical to understand what we should or should not be doing when we use artificial intelligence in scientific writing. So please, Mohammed, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Giovanni. And I would like also to thank Professor Peter Tanko, who's the director of the Renal Research Institute, for delivering such a presentation in the scientific writing course at Cairo. So let's start by the definition of artificial intelligence. Actually, there is no clear definition of the artificial intelligence, but to make it simple, the AI involves using computer system to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. But the difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence is much more faster and more accurate in some ways, like we will see right now. Like we said, there is no universal definition of AI in the literature, but central to most definition, it is the ability of a machine system to learn. There are so many types of artificial intelligence, like machine learning model. It's an algorithmic that use some data to make predictions, not only for this data, but when applied to other data. If you have a single center registry data, like transplantation data, and you want to create a formula, an algorithm to detect the predictors of graft survival, you can apply this machine learning method using the artificial intelligence and came up with an algorithm that can be applied to other data registries in other places. There is also the deep learning, the large language model, the generative artificial intelligence, and the large language model is the most important one used in scientific writing. One, I think that almost all of us heard about ChatGPT. ChatGPT is one of the large language model that was developed by an OpenAI corporate company in the United States of America. And the ChatGPT You can use it to summarize articles, to create an email for you, to improve your English language, to help you transit smoothly from one path to the other. So artificial intelligence, who does what? Actually, it depends. So like if you are a physician, you can use the artificial intelligence to define the goal, helps other team members to grasp the relevance of real life questions. If you are a data scientist, you can use analytical and technical capabilities to extract meaningful insights from the data. If you are a data engineer, you can ensure uninterrupted flow of data between servers and applications. If you are a statistician or biostatistician, you can use theoretical expertise in statistics and apply them to real-life problems. Some of the algorithms from machine learning or extracted from AI is the machine learning. If you are a mathematician, you can use mathematical modeling and computational methods to solve practical problems. So how should we use artificial intelligence for us nephrologists who are interested in medical research? You can use them to analyze the data, to guide you in choosing the proper statistical methods, to summarize an article for you. They can navigate through millions or thousands of articles, don't say millions, thousands of articles in very short and small time. So the role of AI in medical fields, they can be summarized in 2 main points. AI can be used for diagnosis, treatment personalization, management system in healthcare. Its role extends to enhancing the accuracy and efficiency of medical research and documentation. On the other hand, AI streamlines the process of medical writing from the initial research phase to the publication. It can help you in making your scientific writing, in your English writing, more precise, more accurate, okay, more smooth, and even more professional. AI system will not create a paper for you. It will not write a paper from the scratch. Some might think that I can use ChatGPT or any other AI method to develop a research idea and then he writes this idea for me, create it from zero. No, it won't do it. You can deal with AI as a servant, but a very smart servant. You tell him what you want, you give him the data, you give him your analysis, you give him your results. Actually, you give him what you already wrote, but it will help you in improving your text writing. It might even point you to some other areas you missed. It can help you in getting the gaps in your research. Okay, so how can AI enhance research efficiency? In automated research, automated literature research, we can use the natural language model to understand and fetch relevant articles based on context rather than mere keywords. When we use data registries like the PubMed, Medline, or Cochrane, we use keywords. For example, I want to look for a paper that talks about rejection in kidney transplant recipients. Using the natural, the classic method, I will use keywords like kidney or renal, transplant or recipient, rejection or survival. And you are using the Boolean operators and, or, and not. But in using the artificial intelligence model, I can use the whole sentence. I'm looking for graft survivor or the rate of rejection in kidney transplant recipient. And the artificial intelligence model is smart enough to understand what I am looking for. I don't have to give him keywords. He already understands what I'm looking for, and the results will be very precise and very accurate. Also, I can use some of the AI machines to faster hypothesis generation and validation, and it is very time consuming for scientific discoveries. I can use some of the AI tools for error reduction, AI tools that compare text against database of clinical information to verify facts and figures. I can use it only. I can use it also for reference management. Like we have tools like EndNote. It can help you in reference writing, in formatting the writing of your reference according to the style of your desired journal. Mendeley, Zotero, and many others. Future aspect and challenges. We should be cautious when we use AI models because despite its advanced interpretation of data, they might soon the AI might soon provide not just data analysis, but also draft discussions around the data, proposing potential implication. However, we should be very cautious regarding the data privacy, because till now, many models like ChatGPT, they warn you at the beginning. If you are giving him data, if you are giving him your results, if you give him your discussion, they can be shared with others, because he learns and develops his abilities from his input, including you and including your results. So what are the main pitfalls of the artificial intelligence? The main issue is the hallucination. And by hallucination, we mean sometimes you give him input, you ask him for something, and he can fabricate anything. The problem with these models is that they don't say, I don't know. If you ask him for a reference, he will give you a reference. He can fabricate a reference from nothing. He doesn't tell you, oh, there is no reference pointing at this, there is no reference pointing at that. No, he will fabricate everything and create everything. So you should be very cautious and very critical in using such models. If you navigate the internet, there are tons of artificial intelligence softwares. You can use it for your scientific writing, and tons literally means hundreds. I collected the most common 6. Grammarly. Grammarly, you can use it for, from its name, you can use it to adjust your grammar. He can guide your writing very well. If you forgot a period, if you forgot a colon, a semicolon, he can advise you to change from the passive verb to the active verb, and so on. EndNote is one of the most preferable and most famous software used for reference styling. Others reference styling used other than EndNote, like Zotero, Mendeley, they are exist. Scholarly, you can give him 100 articles. It will summarize to you and give you an Excel sheet that containing the different points and different summarizing points of these 100 articles in less than a minute. Killbot, you can use it for paraphrasing to avoid the plagiarism. ChatGPT, everyone of us already know. SciNote, you can use it to make a progress of your lab progress. So finally, how should we use AI as a researcher? Like I said, we should use it as a servant, a friend. It will not create anything from the start, it will not create anything from scratch, but it will be very helpful to you. If you are searching for papers and your search takes 3 days, make your search in half an hour, in 1 hour, 2 hours. So it saves time. It speeds things up and create first drafts and suggestions really fast. Things of AI are helpful tool that does the boring stuff, leaving you to focus only on the main idea, making your research findings and research writing very fine, very delicate, and very smooth. Remember, you are the boss, you are in charge. AI, even if it's smart enough, it's not smarter than you, you are smarter than him. Okay, so you should be very critical when you use the output of the AI model. We lean on the AI when we need a hand, but you should trust your own knowledge first to make sure that everything is just right. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for this talk on artificial intelligence and also its potential implication in scientific writing. So we are quite short of time. So what I would like to do is I would like to open a discussion. If there are any questions, please write them in the chat box. There are already 2 questions in the chat box, which I will read aloud and we will get answers to. And if any other questions arise, please write them in as rapidly as possible, and then we will leave this to our chairman of the Young Nephrology Committee of AFRAN, Dr. Yannick Landu, to close. So the question they put in the chat is for Dr. Adidi. In your experience, when and how can we apply AI in clinical daily practice in African countries with very limited resources? So may I suggest that you address this question, but particularly with focus on scientific writing, which is the objective of this course, please.
Yes, okay. So regarding the scientific writing, you have many free soft AI tools, and they are very helpful for countries with limited resources. Like, for example, I usually use Mendeley and Zotero for reference styling. They are totally free. You don't have to pay. You don't have to subscribe. creating the account is free. I also use ChatGPT. You have two versions, free version 3.5 and the paid version 4. I use the free version 3.5. Like I said, it helps me to refine my language and improved my writing very much. However, you shouldn't depend 100% on it. You should be critical. Sometimes you want to move from one paragraph to another. You want to comment on this table using some kind of style. ChatGPT is helpful. It will help you, but don't take 100% of what's written. It will guide your mind. Also, I use a tool like Grammarly, and you know, it's not cheating. You're not cheating on anyone. Grammarly will help you if you missed things in your English texting, like period, colon, semicolon. It tells you a message. You should change this verb from the passive to the active. You used this word several times, like excellent. Change to mandatory, essential, rather than using the same word repeatedly. So it guides you to things like that. Yes, we have many AI tools used in research, and they have paid version. You have to pay for them. But at the same time, we have many AI tools dedicated for scientific writing, and they are totally free.
Very good. Well, there was another question for me. What are the areas of daily clinical practice of AI in your practice nowadays? I will be very brief. I would say I use it very little, and primarily for things that have nothing to do with the clinical work. I recently gave a speech at the wedding of one of my researchers, and I asked ChatGPT to write the speech simply because I don't have time, and it's a very easy way. I think science is something else, but we can take some advantage in particularly to cut our when we don't have time to rapidly get information, when we don't have time, which we still have to filter through our own mind. There has been a time when people were writing scientific articles and including ChatGPT as an author because they asked ChatGPT to write the article for them, which is doable. It will write an article for you, and many other tools will write it. The problem is that often this led to very major mistakes in the writing because people have to be very critical of what they are getting, and they have to be the primary people to re-elaborate it. So in my view, you should use it to help you with your work rather than to do the work with you. And this obviously applies in daily clinical practice. So I love the tool. I think it will do a lot for us, but I'm not particularly enthusiastic at any specific use which goes above what we do in the primary instance. But of course you can use it, like, I received a request recently about how to do the diagnostic criteria for a specific disease, and instead of wasting my time to write an email down on the topic, I asked ChatGPT to write the email, and I just flicked through it in 30 seconds and sent it to somebody. It's just to make things smoother. Anyway, is there any other question from the audience relating specifically to writing the background, methods, results, and discussion session of a paper? I cannot see the audience, but I guess I see they can write in the chat box. So if they have questions, please set them up. If not, I would like to say that I think you should consider our speakers today as a point of reference in your country for any question that you would like to be addressed. This is part of the reason why we do scientific writing courses, and why I'm very enthusiastic that you have organized this course, because it's about being a point of reference for other people. Many people write scientific articles and often need help, guidance, and support. So we got an excellent talk from Victorine, Mohammed, Hassan and Basma, you should feel free to contact them, I think, in your respective countries for advice, and just as well, feel free to contact me and Yannick. So if there are no other questions, Yannick, I will leave it to you to close the meeting.
Thank you, Professor Giovanni. I will just remind to all speakers that we have a research subcommittee in the Young Nephrology committee, and I will be happy if all speakers will join this committee to help all African young nephrologists to write a paper. I would like to thank you, Professor Giovanni, for accepting our invitation to lead this first webinar. It was a pleasure for us to have you. And a special thanks to Mara Rodriguez and Sophie Dupuis from ISN. Thank you to our panelists. This webinar was very great. I learned a lot from you, and thank you to the participants. I would just like to remind that we have another webinar on April 22 on how to write a good bankable research project. Thank you, and see you for the next webinar. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Hands
Thank
up
you.
so we can take a picture.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Have
Bye.
a good night.
Bye.